When I was 6 years old, my father was killed in a car accident. My grandparents brought me to the funeral home, and my grandfather picked me up so that I could see. However, when I looked down into that casket and saw the lifeless body of my father, it terrified me, and I turned away and put my arms around my grandfather's neck and held him oh so tightly, and I never looked again. And that began many years of a fear of death. For the next 26 years, I avoided funerals. But it wasn't until my grandfather passed away and the funeral was done that I walked up to the casket alone and spent some time saying goodbye to my grandfather. I held his hand and I cried. And I turned away and walked away from that casket. That was the beginning of the healing of my fear of death. My name is Dawn Linger, and this is my story. In 2008, my father-in-law had a massive stroke. And after spending a few days in the hospital, he came home to live with his daughter-in-law, Janelle, under hospice care. And that was the first that I had been introduced to hospice. I was there because I wanted to support my husband and his family, but I was terrified. And yet, as I watched that whole process unfold, I saw that dying could be with dignity, that dying could be a healing process. My mother-in-law, Nellie, suffered from congestive heart failure. The doctor said that she could no longer live alone. So she came to live with Fred and I, and at a certain point, after many visits to the hospital, she said she wasn't going to do it anymore, that she was done with hospitals. And the doctor explained that that meant she would die. And so hospice was called in, and a hospital bed was brought in, and she then went under hospice care, which was an incredible team of people who took care of her.
Thanks a lot, thanks, appreciate it. Okay, you have a good day now. Okay.
Having Nellie here was an extreme blessing because I had the privilege of getting to know my mother-in-law in a special way. We spent much time talking. I heard a lot of stories that I had never heard before. She had a tremendous love for the tigers. Oh my goodness, and that was the year that they were a challenge. She'd loved to eat her peanut M&Ms, and she enjoyed doing her cross-stitching. And she was able to enjoy it because she was feeling so much better, and I can only attribute that to the great care she was receiving from her hospice team. Nellie put together a surprise for her family, and it was because of services that are provided by hospice, utilizing volunteers, that she was able to pull this surprise off. She and I worked with two different volunteers doing a My Life story, as well as special photographs never seen by her family. No one knew this was taking place. It was a secret. My instructions from Nellie, after this was all put together, was to be given to her children as a gift after she had passed. It was her final gift. I had the awesome privilege of presenting them to her children. And as we sat there, I was able to watch Larry and Ken and the rest of the kids open these gifts and begin reading their mom's life story. There were tears, and there was laughter, there was silence. It was an amazing gift that she gave to them. And I can't thank hospice enough and the wonderful volunteers who made that possible for her to do. For most families, after a loved one passes away, their story ends there. But for me, it was really just the beginning. I was so touched and impacted by the love I saw given through hospice that I knew I wanted to be able to give back to that program. So after the funeral and after all that stuff that happens afterwards, I called the volunteer coordinator with hospice and said, I'd like to become a volunteer. And they told me no. I couldn't believe it. They said, no, we have a policy that makes you wait for 1 year for bereavement. Well, that was frustrating because I was ready to just jump in, but it was a wise decision and it was a good policy. However, 1 year to the day, June 25th, 2012, I called the volunteer coordinator and said, okay, when do we get started? And that's when my life as a hospice volunteer began. And I haven't looked back. I now have 3 hospice patients that I'm working with, and they are incredible women. The first one is Doris, and she loves to quilt, and she has been teaching me how to quilt. She's an incredible woman, and I appreciate her so much. Then there is Greta. Now, Greta, she is not able to do a whole lot, and the one thing she asked for me to do for her was to just talk. And that's what I do. That's my gift. I'm really good at talking, and she loves that. But now we've built our relationship so that it's not just me talking. We talk together, and we love that. Then we have Ruth, and she is a very dear, special woman. She's 99 years old. She was a music teacher, and we just love singing the old hymns together and sharing scripture and just talking about our lives. And my life is so blessed. Here, I thought I would be able to impact lives for their good, when in fact, I'm the one who's receiving the blessing as a volunteer. I never would have imagined myself becoming a part of this incredible program, but it has been such a blessing in my life. It has brought so much healing to where I no longer fear death, and I realize that death can be part of dignity and living life to its fullest to the very end. And for that, I'm very thankful for. It's been a tremendous blessing in my life, and it's only because of hospice and the impact that they had in my life and in Nellie's life that this has ever become possible. And I know now that this is what I'm supposed to do. This is my life's calling, and I don't see myself ever doing anything different.